Howdy everybody! This is just a really brief video on the topic of SOAPSTone. It's really close to some of the other rhetorical analysis things we've done before. This is also something that's very common to cover in high school because it is a very basic level way of looking at the pieces of the rhetorical situation, the rhetorical triangles, and just kind of figuring out the what of a text so that you can go a little bit deeper and figure out the why of a text. So SOAPSTone stands for subject, occasion, audience, purpose, speaker, and tone. Subject obviously is the topic of the piece of text. The occasion is, think of the occasion as being like the thing that exists in the world or the conversation that exists in the world that the writer is responding to. You can also think about it as what is it that drove the writer to create this piece in the first place. The audience is the audience can be a tricky thing. The audience is almost never just anybody who reads this piece. Obviously, an author understands that their piece could potentially be read by anyone, so potentially everyone is their audience. But generally speaking, authors have certain groups of people in mind when they write. They may be aiming their work at a group of people who have had a specific set of experiences. They may be aiming their work at a specific kind of professional. They may be aiming their work at people who believe the same things as they do, politically or socially. They may be aiming their work at people who believe differently than they do, politically or socially. They may also be writing to explain their experiences to people who have not had those similar experiences. Next is purpose. Purpose and audience are similar. Purpose is the why the author is writing. What are they trying to accomplish? So where occasion refers to why the author is writing in terms of what are they responding to, or what conversation are they joining? Purpose is what is the author trying to make happen? Is the author trying to convince someone of something? Is the author trying to create some kind of change in the real world? Is the author trying to entertain their audience or educate them in some way? It could be a combination of multiple of those things. Next is speaker. And remember that speaker doesn't just mean the name of the writer, the name of the author. Speaker refers to the version of the author that is speaking in this moment. For example, in this moment, the speaker of this video is Lydia Wiseau, but it's the version of Lydia Wiseau who is a college freshman composition professor. If I go home and talk to my cats, then I am just Lydia the cat mom. If I go and I talk to my boyfriend, then I am speaking as Lydia the girlfriend. If I am just out in the world grocery shopping and I ask, a store clerk about whether they have any sanitizing wipes in stock, then I am Lydia the grocery shopper. So speaker and purpose and, occasion really go closely together. You need to identify not only sort of the name of the author, but also what role are they taking on in any given moment? Are they mentoring? Are they speaking as a professional? Are they speaking as a concerned citizen? Who are they speaking as? And finally, tone. Tone is the attitude or the emotion that the author seems to be taking toward their work. Are they angry? Do they seem nostalgic? Do they seem wistful? Do they seem desperate somehow? Tone is also closely tied to style, although style doesn't make this list. Style has a lot to do with audience as well. Style is like, is it a naturalistic style? Are they speaking in a very formal style because it's a formal occasion? Are they being very formal because they're trying to convince a powerful body of rulers or something? So tone is the attitude that the author takes, and style is kind of how they get there. So this is just a brief video about how SOAPSTone functions, and I want to take us through an even briefer example. Let's look at the Malcolm X piece. So the subject of coming to an awareness of language is obviously Malcolm X's journey into becoming literate in the traditional sense. So the subject would be gaining literacy, how he gained literacy. The occasion of writing, in this case, would be as sort of part of his biography. I don't think there was a specific historical event that made him write this, but he seems to have written it as a response to, maybe people wanting to know about his life or people sort of questioning his credibility. The audience of Malcolm X's piece, to me, and this is where our interpretations may differ, but as I read the piece, it felt as if Malcolm X was telling a story that was more geared toward people who had not shared his experiences. The way that he spoke about growing up in the community that he grew up in, and then the way that he explained prison life, it felt like he was going out of his way to explain some of the basics of those situations, which makes me think that he may have written for people who may have had a more middle class upbringing, people who may have never had contact with the criminal justice system. So I'm going to guess that his audience are people who have had other experiences than his own. Next is purpose. The purpose of this piece seems to be multiple. There seem to be several kind of key purposes here. One of them obviously is to inform his audience about the way that he became literate. Another would be to discuss sort of what it's like to have to code switch as a young black person in his situation and his historical context, sort of how he had to sort of code switch between the kind of gang, his sort of friends that were in gangs, kind of the way they spoke and how they seemed very intelligent in some ways, and then the way that he learned traditional literacy and the kind of how he was able to code switch among those. He seems also to be telling a kind of inspiring story. Maybe he wants to be inspiring. Maybe he wants to encourage other people of similar backgrounds that they also can become traditionally literate, that they have access to the same kind of tools and code switching opportunities that he does. So he seems to have many purposes here. The speaker, it's obviously Malcolm X because he's the author, but the role that he seems to be taking on is one of, it's part guide. He seems to be guiding us through his experiences, so he's sort of functioning as a guide, and he's also speaking as someone who understands what it's like to be oppressed, to be part of the downtrodden, to not have access to literacy, to education in the ways that other people might. He also seems to be speaking as someone who knows that education and literacy are possible anyway. And those are, again, you may notice this is very tied to audience and purpose. He seems to be coming to this piece explicitly as someone who says, these are my experiences, these are the things that I have suffered and known in my life, and here's how it could have affected me, here's what I chose to do with it instead. Let this sort of be a lesson and an inspiration, but also let this be a cautionary tale. Not everyone has the same privileges. So those seem to be sort of the speaker positions that he's taking on. Oh, and then in terms of tone, his tone is kind of casual. His tone is not very formal. His tone is not especially, like, it's not sad, it's not grieving. He doesn't seem to grieve that he didn't learn to read and write kind of adequately as a child. His tone seems not overtly inspirational, nor overtly pedantic. He doesn't seem to be trying to teach anyone a lesson so much as sharing his experiences in the hopes that someone will take something useful from it. So that would be sort of what I would identify as his tone. So I hope this helps you understand the concept of SOAPSTone just a little bit better, and then obviously you can take it and you can use it on any text that we read, and it will help you come to an understanding of the basics of the rhetorical situation.